Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Planet Eert. Mr. H here with you. We made it to Friday. I'm doing a little bit early today because I don't know, I've got nothing else better to do. So instead of Friday night, it's going to be Friday afternoon. Hey, I hope you guys had a great week. I did. It was fantastic. If you didn't have such a great week, don't worry. You can always start over again. All you got to do is say, start over. Unless you're in traffic court, those guys will definitely get their money from you. Just a little bit of advice there from your pal Haas, man. Just another glorious day here on planet Earth. And lately I've had this mini fascination with some of America's forgotten wars, in case you might not have noticed. Talked about the Barbary Pirates last time. Barbary Pirates was a forgotten war, which was part of another forgotten war. Yeah, the War of 1812. Nobody remembers this too well. That's why they call it the War of 1812. So you actually have a year. Well, the United States decided to go toe to toe with Great Britain in 1812, but it's not that easy. Right? There's a lot of stuff going on, and people kind of forget about it, especially because they forgot about this war. In the early 19th century, late 18th century, France explodes into revolution. Yeah, you've got the French Revolution. They overthrow the monarchy. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette get their heads lopped off. France has a democracy, kinda. It loses control. We've got Robespierre chopping everybody's heads off till they get tired of him and they chop his head off. Napoleon takes over, so you've gone all the way from a monarchy to a democracy, back around to a monarchy again, though he calls himself an emperor. What's that got to do with us? Well, France and Britain are going after each other again, as usual, as they have over the last 1,000 years. And it's a fight to the death. Britain and France are going toe to toe. Whoever wins will probably end up dominating the planet. The British have a navy, the French sort of have a navy. Most of it got sunk at Trafalgar. And it's a fight to the death. Yeah, they're trying to blockade the British to starve them out. The British, of course, are blockading the French. The United States, we see ourselves as neutral, therefore we could trade with anybody. Britain, in the fight for its life, doesn't quite see it this way. Neither does France, but Britain has the bigger navy. And it's 1812, so we've kind of got a little bit of a history with the British, and it's not exactly good. So what happens is American ships go, to either France or Britain, they get hijacked. The French will stop American ships from going into Great Britain. The British will stop American ships from going into France and, on occasion, Great Britain. Yep. The French are looking for contraband items, stuff that the British can eat. The British are looking for stuff that's contraband that the French can use, i.e. food, but they've got an entire continent. Britain's in some trouble here. And the British also, well, we'll just say the Royal Navy recruiting techniques weren't all that great. Yeah, they end up stopping American ships and they grab U.S. sailors. They claim they're looking for British deserters, but they'll grab anybody. 3 people died, 3 people deserted, 3 people got executed. Let's stop an American ship and grab 3 people. You can't do that, right? But they're doing it, especially international waters. That's basically piracy. It's one thing to fight the Barbary pirates. The British Empire is a somewhat more difficult task. We tell them to stop. They don't listen. Trade is suffering. Can't trade with the British. Can't trade with the French down into the Mediterranean. You got the Barbary pirates. And, the British are just being, what's the Canadian term? Hose bags about the whole thing. Not to mention they're occupying forts in the Northwest. They're supposed to leave with convenient speed in 1783. It's 1812 and they're still there. So, we got some unfinished business with these guys. Canada always has this fear of the United States gobbling up Canada. Could we do it? Probably. Should we do it? Not really. It's not even a moral question. It's just kind of what are we supposed to do with it? They got a football league. We got one here already, too. They got a screwball government. We got one, too, right? So it's just, it's redundant is what it is. But nonetheless, that fear is real because, well, 1812, the United States did try to take Canada. Since the British kept trying to take our ships, since the British were actually taking our ships and seizing our ships, we decided can't really fight with them toe to toe in the on the sea yet. Even though our navy got bigger to fight the pirates, it's still you're going against the Royal Navy, man. That's the big leagues there. So if we can't beat them on the ocean, We can take Canada away from them. So that was kind of the idea. The War of 1812 was not thought out very well on either side. It was fought basically by the scrubs. Nobody, they wanted to fight everybody, but no one had thought about preparing for it. The British are in the fight for their lives there with the French, so they've got second and third rate people over in Canada. The United States Army is all of 7,000 men strong. They could walk right through the battle, Waterloo, and no one even noticed they were there. So the United States tries to bolster its armed forces with militia. Any goofball comes running out of the woods screaming, "I want to fight for the country," and welcome aboard. Individually, these militiamen are good soldiers. They're good in the woods. They're good at individual fighting. But as a unit and collectively, I mean, other than numbers, they really don't have a lot going for them. Nor does the United States really have a strategy for conquering Canada, which was strange considering they'd been thinking about it for a while. It didn't get off to a good start. We declare war on Great Britain. The British policy of orders in council, that's how they were seizing American ships, ironically was lifted 2 days before the U.S. declaration of war that started the War of 1812. But given the communications at the time, nobody knew. June 18th, 1812, U.S. declares war without realizing that on the 16th day of June, 1812, Britain had lifted the orders to hijack American ships. They were going to leave them alone because they had problems with France. Nonetheless, the problem has come to them. They have waited way too long, and even if we got the word in time, I just got the feeling they really wanted to take Canada in 1812. So they have this brilliant idea of a three-pronged attack into Canada. The British had their back turned, very weak in Canada. We can take them down. It's an apple ripe for the plucking. I think Henry Clay called it a mere matter of marching. Turns out it wasn't. Didn't get off to the great start here. General Isaac Hull over in Detroit. He decides to venture into Canada. Sees a huge British army supplemented by a huge native army. Tecumseh and his confederacy there. Retreated back to Detroit and promptly surrendered. So there we are. The British have Detroit. Not sure you call that a win or not. But yep, they've got it. It's theirs. And they took it without a shot being fired. Yep, not the best start. The man who conquered Detroit, i.e. walked in, was a Canadian hero, an Englishman named Isaac Brock, who really didn't want the job. He wanted to be in the big leagues fighting against Napoleon. Instead, they sent him out to Canada to fight against the Americans. It's ironic. This is a guy who died defending Canada, a place he didn't like, fighting with Canadians, people he didn't really want to be around, and he's a national hero. Well, at least you got something out of it, right? The second prong of this opening attack, well, there we have General Dearborn trying to ram his way through the Niagara Falls area. Doesn't work too well because they get there, they lose, and then the militia shows up and they point out to General Dearborn that their obligation is not to fight outside the United States. Yeah, they walk right up to the line and refuse to go. Thanks. So then everyone's got to retreat back out of there. Some of the militiamen shot over the line at the British and Canadian militia, but thanks for nothing, guys. Ironically, the British had the same problem. Yeah, they got to the line, saw the Americans retreated, wanted to keep going. Canadian militia says, we're not obligated to fight outside of Canada. You see the supporting staff both sides have? They probably should have just called it a draw right there and went home. Prong number 3, going into Ontario, coming up from upstate New York, right? Idea, maybe we can go through that eastern sliver of Ontario and get Montreal, right? They're also thinking maybe Toronto. Anyway, Admiral Rushler, who's commanding an army, which doesn't make any sense, he marches up to the border, and guess what? They decide our obligations don't require us to fight outside the United States. So, glad you got your walking in. Went to the line, turned around, came back. While he was sleeping in his tent, people left and were shooting through his tent while he was asleep. Good thing he was laying down, right? Yeah, off to a great start there, aren't we? So the British are, they looked over there. They're very upset with us for jumping on them from behind while they're fighting Napoleon. On the other hand, doesn't look like they got a lot to fear, do they? So in 1813, the U.S. takes another shot at Canada. They go marching into the Niagara Peninsula again. The British are like, oh, here they come again, no problem. Actually led them over the line to ambush them. They figure a couple shots, wait for the militia to disintegrate. They fire, the line doesn't break, and one British commander yells, "My God, those are regulars!" Exactly. See the gray uniforms? No, it's not the Confederate States, just the United States. It was cheap and they needed some uniforms. They trained a bunch of new people, so the regular army is up to 15,000 at this point. They are marching in straight lines, very disciplined, and they defeat the British at Chippewa. They've pushed beyond Niagara Falls. They're going to go up the side of the Golden Horseshoe and take down Toronto. Except they run into the Battle of Lundy's Lane. Yep, after winning at Chippewa, they go a little bit further. They smash into a larger British force and more Canadians. And this battle is basically a draw. Both sides just knock the living daylights out of each other. The American advance is stopped. However, they did fight the British toe to toe. They've won one battle and got a tie out of the other one, 3 out of 4 points. And as this was going on, an American raiding force sails across the water over there at the Great Lakes and burns down York, Toronto. Actually, they launched a raid. They went crazy and burning stuff down, and Toronto gets burned to the ground. At the time, it was called York. Later, they call it Toronto. I always think about the burning of York, and the first thing that comes to my mind is when the Penguins last year went in Toronto and completely destroyed the Toronto Maple Leafs 5-0 on their home ice. This game that you're seeing there was actually in Pittsburgh, and that's another one we beat them pretty bad there. That one was a 5-1. They got a goal at the very end. I think we just gave it to them. We got tired of beating up on them. So the burning of Toronto there in 1813 and again in 2022 and another beating in 2023. The last time Toronto Maple Leafs have won a World Stanley Cup was in 1967. Yeah. I wasn't even born yet, man. And my cousin in Saskatchewan, Toronto Maple Leaf fan, and yeah, he's never seen them win a championship. And the Steelers had quite a drought. The Penguins had quite a drought, but at least we've won, and we've done it in recent times. So, I don't know what your problem is, Toronto. Maybe that burning of Toronto affected them more than we thought it did. Well, they're going to get back at us. Now, we were going to march also right alongside Lake Champlain, the same thing Rechler had done. And we found something. We found a British army on the north end of Lake Champlain over there. Uh-oh, hang on a minute. So they back up, and they figure the British plan out. The British are going to build their own fleet, and they're going to sail across, land, and march down towards New York, right? So Admiral McDonough, again, an admiral commanding a land force, don't know what that's about. He sees this and decides to use his strength. He's a naval guy, so he's going to build a Great Lakes fleet, and he is going to fight the British on the water, beat them, and they won't be able to make a landing. So Napoleon loses, and guess what? Now it's time to take care of those pesky Americans. They're going to come down on the Americans like a ton of bricks. 3-pronged attack, and this is the first one. They're going to sail across Lake Champlain. They're going to swat that American fleet out of the way, land, and go all the way to New York. The second prong, they're going to land in Maryland, take down the second largest harbor, Baltimore. And prong number 3, take out the biggest port they can find, New Orleans, and then they're going to strangle the United States. That's the plan. And just like our 3-pronged attacks, their 3-pronged attack is going to completely go astray. First thing that happens, they try to sail with arrogant confidence through the Americans at the Battle of Lake Champlain, and we bust them right in the nose. They never knew what hit them. Our ships were ready for them. We were blasting up broadsides, brought some cannons on the shoreline to take a few more shots at them because it is our side of the line, and the British get sunk right there in Lake Champlain. Somebody called it the Battle of Plattsburgh. Some guys got to the shoreline, but they just got captured. We end up letting them go. Yeah, I don't want to feed these guys, right? So the British Army on the other side of Lake Champlain, hey, I don't know, go surfing, do some fishing, because you are not coming across that lake. D.C. and Balto, Chesapeake campaign. This one, you talk about everybody just confused, the U.S. and the British. At this time, we have U.S. and British negotiators meeting in Belgium to discuss a peace treaty. Why it took so long, I don't know. Due to communications, nobody knows what's going on. But as they were beginning to negotiate, The British sail into Chesapeake Bay. They're after Baltimore, and they are bombing the daylights out of Fort McHenry. We even get a national anthem out of this, Francis Key Scott. But they never took the fort. They couldn't get there. They actually landed soldiers, still couldn't get there. We chased them off, so Baltimore didn't work out so great for them. On the other hand, they landed a diversionary force near D.C. They put together a quick scratch force of local guys to try to hold off the British Empire from the White House, including some slaves. They said, "You're free," handed them a weapon. They took off. I don't blame them. Even President Madison was out there with his dueling pistols, taking his obligation to defend the Constitution rather seriously. They quietly, pushed him off and sent him somewhere safe. The British just basically smashed the local yokels out of the way and went into the White House. Dolly Madison was convinced, perhaps insane, that they're not going to come near the White House. She had prepared dinner and was setting the table. They grabbed her and said, "Get out, the British are here." Not the British are coming, the British are here. The British show up, they eat dinner, and then burn the White House down. Yeah, it's not exactly hospitable, but, it's what they do. Welcome to war. As this was going on, they finally signed a peace treaty over in Belgium, the Treaty of Ghent. But we didn't know about that because of the communications at the time. So even though there was a peace treaty in Europe, nobody over here knew about it, and the British force that was landing to attack New Orleans does so. They land in the Rodriguez Canal, they come right up the middle, and there's Andrew Jackson, blast them into next week. The British, being British, get together, get reorganized, and charge the second time up the middle. Now, these guys are veterans of the fighting in Europe, so, they're not going to fall apart. However, the second volley really demolished them, though they came close to the ramparts, and General Packingham, an experienced general from fighting Napoleon, catches one right between the eyes, and that's basically it. Game over, British retreat, the Americans let them retreat, pick up their dead, wounded, and get out of here. So a huge victory at New Orleans, even though the war had been over for 2 weeks. Again, the communications. This is kind of an odd picture here. There's Packingham, I think, over there with the sword and the red there. Hey, look like you got a good way before you got nailed. And there's Andrew Jackson up there, silhouetted. That's really a perfect target. I see about, a half dozen Highlanders looking right at him. I don't know how he made it through that. So the U.S. gets a big victory in the battle in New Orleans, and then everybody finds out there was a peace treaty 2 weeks later. Well, what do you want me to do about it, right? If you get terrible internet service, this kind of thing happens. What you use a hotspot for. So the Treaty of Ghent basically told everybody to go back to their neutral corners. Everything you'd captured, you hand it back. So a war that nobody was ready for, a war that was badly executed, a war that just looked like a battle between two teams of 6-year-olds ends with nobody really gaining anything. We didn't get Canada, but on the other hand, the British aren't messing with our ships again, are they? All right, so I'll say it's a narrow victory. Came ahead on points. Here's Charlie the Trachodon. Why Charlie? I don't know. It looks like a Charlie. I looked at him and said Charlie. Trachodon is an aquatic, duck-billed, as you probably guessed, dinosaur. Lived around in swamps and lakes and such. Used that big bill to scoop up algae and plants, things like this. Mainly North America. There's some relatives we found in Asia, and it might even be a couple in Europe. It's still kind of speculative. But Trachodon is one of those dinosaurs, one of the first they ever discovered. And that's the one they think, that they might have gotten right the first time around. Human beings like to argue, in case you haven't noticed. And yes, even Trachodon gets pulled into arguments. Here's a Trachodon skeleton. See the bill? I see a bill. All right, we got that part right. We've got the rest of the skeleton. We've got some fairly complete specimens, so we can kind of, extrapolate what the rest must have looked like, because it's an animal from planet Earth, and there's certain body plans that have stayed the same throughout the ages. So Trachodon, look at that, decide what it must have looked like. First, I'm going to talk about that tail. Is it a thick tail or is it a thin tail? They weren't sure because the bones on the tail, right, was actually extension of vertebrae. They're very large, so it means they had a very strong tail. Now, if it's a strong tail, does it mean it just moves the tail very fast, or is it a thick tail? And why would it have a thick tail? It lives in a water environment, so you probably don't want to be that heavy. And how's it supposed to walk? Is it going to drag its tail behind it the whole time? I don't know. It looks like it'll just slow it down. So once again, it lives in the water. It doesn't need to be that heavy. So the tail is a source of contention. So then they came up with the leaning gait. What you saw before is what they called the kangaroo gait, almost standing straight up, which is a departure from most early depictions of dinosaurs. But here, they've decided somewhere around the 70s and 80s that maybe it had a leaning sort of gait. Again, we got the tail problem. So if it was a thick tail, it probably couldn't lean forward. If it's a thin tail, it could. But is it dragging the tip? Shouldn't the tail be a little bit higher? Seems to make sense. And you can see how big a Trachodon is. It could be a pretty big animal, but, it's not as big as the other things living there. So we're wondering if it's a water animal, it's got to come out at some time. So how's it going to walk? And if it can walk, how can it run? Why does it need to run? Yeah, guess who else lives in the neighborhood? You're in the Cretaceous period. Yep, T-Rex is running around. So when you come out of the water, yeah, there's always the chance of getting attacked, a chance of getting attacked in the water, but definitely outside the water. So you're going to have to move quickly. So we see this is an old picture, looks like from the 60s, our friend Charles Knight. We got one Trachodon there dragging its tail. This other Trachodon looks surprised. I don't know. Wow, don't there's any cover. I can't see this thing sneaking up on you. Again, the tail dragging on the ground. Could it really run away that fast? It has to lift the tail in order to run, right? You would think so. See the lake back there. I don't know if you're going to make it there or not, but definitely stay away from the teeth. So we also know T-Rex ate Trachodons because we have direct evidence of that. We have a backbone, a vertebrae with a T-Rex tooth lodged in it, right? And, you ready for this? The wound had healed. So the tooth was still stuck in his back. The wound had healed around it, so it must have hurt, but the thing lived. So the point is, Trachodon has to look out for things like T-Rex. So how's it going to move? Is it going to drag the tail and try to run? Is it going to lift the tail and run? Is it a two-legged animal? It seems obvious to me, but believe it or not, even that has come under fire. It's Edmontosaurus, which is a close relative to Trachodon. As you can see, it's got the upright kangaroo tripod pose, we like to call it. And around the 2020s or so, maybe 2018, I think I remember reading about this, a new version of what this dinosaur looked like came out. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think it was a quadruped. No, those arms, they're way too small to support the weight for a long time. Yeah, maybe it got down on fours to eat things or hide or maybe even go underwater for a while, but I don't think it walked around on all four legs. Also, you can tell by looking at the feet, it's got 3 toes. For some reason, I want to give it hooves now. It's very thickly muscled, which could be true, but we're not really sure. But I'm not too sure. I'm not sold on this one, man. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. Something like that doesn't look like it lives in the water. And, they tried to say maybe it's not a, they tried to change the snout and made it a beak somewhat. But now I'm looking at that skeleton. It's definitely a duckbill. All right, so I think the original might be actual closer. Maybe not perfect, but makes a lot more sense. I am wondering about the tail, though. All righty, let's argue about something else. Let's argue about the Steelers and the Rams. Last time they played in 2019, Steelers won. They played it in the comfy Heinz, at that time, Heinz Field, beating up on the Rams. I don't like it when you run and you turn and taunt the other guy. That should be a penalty for 15 yards. Maybe it's a little old school, but the thing I'm really worried about is that, see that guy you're taunting? Yeah, he's going to remember, okay? And he'll redouble his efforts to defeat you. Maybe even, I don't know, while you're not looking, get nailed from behind and send you flying. Yeah, these things happen, especially in pile-ups, right? Ref can't see everything. Think about it. Just scored a touchdown. You want to beat them. Point at the scoreboard. Nonetheless, the Steelers and the Rams are going toe-to-toe next week. They won't be playing in Pittsburgh. They're going to be playing in L.A. in SoFi Stadium, the 9,999th wonder of the world, SoFi Stadium. Look at this thing, man. Looks like a giant teardrop. Not sure what that's about. But you can see the stadium's only about half the structure here. They built a mall around this thing. Look at it. It's not a football game. This is a shopping experience with a football game around it. I mean, it's weird. I will say this though, it is privately funded. I'll give them that. There's one thing I don't like. I don't like full public funding of a football stadium. Maybe a portion here and there, but yeah, no, I'm not going to help a billionaire build a football stadium. Okay, this thing cost $5 billion. Had that come out of tax money, some politician's losing his job over that. You could do a lot with $5 billion, but nonetheless, privately funded. Stan Kroenke, whatever his name is, moved the Rams from St. Louis, long story there, bought the land, built the stadium, his own money and his partners, so I guess I can't complain that much about it. On the inside, it's a nice looking stadium. It's got that artificial turf I don't like, and it's got the roof I really don't like. All right, well, they're worried about the sun. It's California. You got the sun. It might rain. Oh, wow, it rains. It's been going on for what, 4.5 billion years? Gonna happen. What are you, gonna melt? You can tell from the Northeast, right? And look at this big blue thing. They call it the Oculus. It's the biggest scoreboard in the world, fully digitalized. A lot of people say they go there and just watch the whole game on the Oculus. Then what's the point in going to the game, man? You just watch it at home. Well, nonetheless, I guess they just want to be there, right? Be there for the experience. And it is an experience. Excuse me. There. I like my I like the snow, I like the ice, I like all that kind of stuff. I was going to take a drink of my tea right here. And they don't really drink tea at football games, especially not at Acrisure Stadium. Now, a lot of people in the Steeler community are shouting about Matt Canada. He's the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. They say his play calling is conservative. Steelers offense isn't doing that well. It's true, it's not. But remember, it's a young team. I got to keep telling you that over and over. It's a young team. They're going to be streaky. With a new quarterback, you got to have a run-heavy sort of offense, and eventually you start branching out to the passing game. So it's just going to take a while. Hopefully Matt Canada can figure it out before the end of the year. Speaking of running game, we're getting about 3.9 yards a carry, which isn't bad. Not bad. But, I need to up it a little bit. Like to see 4 yards over here. Najee Harris, I don't think they used him enough, especially when you fall behind. You got to throw the ball a lot. So you run, you gain a lead, and you keep running, keep pounding him. The other guy's been helping him out lately is Jalen Warren. That's the guy you're looking at here, is smashing a Baltimore Raven in the face. He's also getting a face mask. So you just got 15 yards out of that. There he is playing in a preseason game against Atlanta. So if that running game to get moving, if he pull out 4, even 5 yards a shot, man, hey, 2nd and 5, the options open up here. You can actually start throwing the ball like everybody wants. Or just keep pounding them with the running game. You pound them in the pace, eventually your defense falls apart. Hey, we're getting Deontay Johnson back. He got hurt in that 30-0 demolition by San Francisco on opening day. Not sure how he hurt himself. Not like the offense did anything. But hey, he's coming back. So now Kenny Pickett's got another offensive weapon to use. Hopefully, the whole thing is starting to come together. This has been the Steeler offense so far. Yep, I think that's a good picture of it there. You ever pull a tank out of the mud? It's not a lot of fun, man. That's 60 tons right there of metal. And it's in the mud. Oh, man. Downhill. You got to pull it uphill. Can't really go forward because you can go forward, it wouldn't be stuck. So this is the Steelers offense for you. Now, it's stuck in the mud. Got to get it out. So instead of pulling it and going forward, you might have to dig around it. And that's where your ground game comes in. Dig into the Rams offense. Dig, dig, dig until you get to the other side. So, on the other side, TJ Watt, hey, we're going to need you again. Just get used to this, TJ. All right, the defense is going to have to step up every single game this year. You might have to knock down a pass. You might have to score a touchdown. It's more likely you got to do all this stuff. And yes, I think he deserves a raise. So, he plays defense. Apparently playing part of offense, Wiley's still on defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's running a concession stand on top of it. Now, on the Rams defense, this is the guy you got to look out for, Ernest Jones. A lot of people talk about the Rams front line. It's very good. But front lines clog up the other guy's line, which allows people like this, Ernest Jones, the linebacker, to fill the gap against the running game and to come in charging against the quarterback on a passing play. So if you stop this guy and push him back, the running game can function. If your running game functions, then your quarterback has time to look back and throw. Keep this guy out of Kenny Pickett's face, and you're going to get a victory. So that brings us to the Rams offense. These are the two guys that make it happen, right? Stafford and Kupp. There's Matt Stafford, former Detroit Lion, somehow survived all of that, came to LA, won a Super Bowl. And Detroit is 5-1. Let's not read too deep into that. This is the guy who makes the offense goes. He's a very good play caller. He's very good at picking up blitzes and looking at people moving around and figure out where they're going to go. He's very good at finding holes. So you have to jump on him. You knock him down, he can't throw the ball. He can't throw this ball. Tim Kupp over here, he's the guy who catches it. And you can see why he does that. Because that San Francisco guy over here has got his back to the quarterback. You have to be looking at the quarterback. Can't let people get behind you. If that happens, you're going to lose. So don't do that, Pittsburgh. Hopefully you don't need me to tell you that. So keep the Rams in check. Score a few points. Maybe you win. And it's in LA. When the Rams and Chargers usually don't get very good crowds, Rams get a few good crowds, get enough Steeler fans in there, we can shout them down. No problem. All righty. You guys have yourself a fantastic day. Don't argue too much with Trachodons. Don't get too upset at a football game. Go out there, have fun, be nice to each other. I will see you in 2 weeks because I'm going on vacation. Where am I going? I'll let you know when I come back. Maybe I'll send you a postcard. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Argue with me in the chat room, in the comments. Point out my many, many mistakes. And we're just going to have fun with the whole thing. Have a great day, and I will see you in a couple weeks. Das vidanya.